Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We wanted to create a resource for you as you are starting to use the professional development tools provided by the American Heart Association and our great partners at Open. We wanted to create a short video to explain how to use this great tool. And so really the opportunity to connect with the American Heart Association with our Kids Heart Challenge and our American Heart Challenge and to be able to receive professional development hours within your state and give you the tools to submit that for your district and or state requirements. And so we do recognize that some states have individual requirements and needs. And so what we try to do to the best of our ability is create a tool that was universal, but please work with your district leaders to make sure that this resource will be accepted for professional development hours. If it does not, please reach out to the American Heart Association and we'll do our very best to provide you the resources needed for that. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to one of our fantastic and great partners, Erin Hart, who is the Open Executive Director, to walk through this resource specifically around Kids Heart Challenge and our American Heart Challenge professional development document as well, which is very similar. And so we hope this will answer all your questions and showcase this great tool for you to use. Aaron?
Great, thanks, Paisley. And as I'm going through the documents, Paisley, if you hear something that I say that maybe sparks a question, feel free to represent everybody who's listening to the webinar and ask those questions along the way. What I want to do is walk through all the documents that we've helped the American Heart Association provide to teachers so that they can document their professional development and growth, and just explain why it's laid out the way that it is and how to use it. This should be a short webinar that everyone can follow along, and if there's any questions that come up, like Paisley said, please reach out, and the American Heart Association and the Kids Heart Challenge team and the American Heart Challenge team will help. So everything that we've done within these documents are based on Charlotte Danielson's framework for teaching. We know that there are a lot of different professional development rubrics that are used across the country, but many of them are based on Charlotte Danielson's framework, or at least have components that match up with her four domains of teaching. So that's where we begin with the development of all of these tools. And if you have a discussion with your professional development coordinator, make sure that you let them know this is all based on Charlotte Danielson's work. So the first page gives you an overview of all of the different tools that are within the packet of information. And one thing that we want to make sure you understand is that participating in Kids Heart Challenge or the American Heart Challenge it's a service to your school, it's a service to your community, and it's also a really great opportunity to expand your professional learning network so that you're gaining resources for your curriculum and you're gaining funds that you need to help build your equipment room and get the tools that you need to teach your students effectively. So it is 100% a professional growth opportunity, and by documenting your work, you're really doing a service to yourself as you look ahead and set goals for your own teaching. So before you really get started, the key to everything is to read through the guide so that you understand all of the different criteria that we've set. There's a holistic rubric that a lot of the evaluation pieces are based on, and again, that's all based on Charlotte Danielson's work. But if you read that, and we'll go over it in just a second, it'll give you a really good idea of what the expectations are. The second step is to share the tool with your professional development administrator, and I would do this about a month ahead of your event if that's at all possible, and give them an opportunity to look through it and give you any feedback on whether or not you're going to need any other components or what the documentation process is for your district specifically. So far, the feedback has been that the materials that we provide are adequate for the districts to give you the professional development credit that you need, but there are always the chances that a district would require some other sort of paperwork or requirement. So sharing that tool with your administrator ahead of time helps to take care of any roadblocks you might come up against as you try to get this through your system. The second thing that we recommend that you do is to complete the guide for each domain after your event is finished. So you're going to go ahead and you're going to execute your Kids Heart Challenge event with all the criteria in mind, but the bulk of the work on this document is going to be done after your Kids Heart Challenge event is finished. And then you'll give yourself a score. It's a self-evaluation. And the key to the self-evaluation isn't that you give yourself the highest score of a 4 all the way through, but that you're thoughtful and you can articulate why you gave yourself the score within each domain. And that information in all the districts that I've worked with on teacher evaluation process, the idea of being very honest and very thoughtful on the evaluations that you provide is the most important thing that you can do. Once you've gone through and you've given yourself those scores, there's a place for you to kind of total everything. You're going to provide all of the documentation of this back to the Kids Heart Challenge and American Heart Challenge staff, and they will actually issue you a certificate of hours that you can copy and staple with all of the information that you would then turn into your district. So that's an overview of kind of the process. As we walk through, it'll start to become more clear on how each page is used. So Paisley, if you could scroll to the next page, we will start to talk through the rubric and the criteria. So from my perspective, we're shooting for level 4, which is distinguished. This is the highest level that you can attain on these rubrics. And by reading through the criteria, you're going to get a really good understanding of what is expected in order to hit that level 4 distinguished mark. I will say, however, most people, if they're truly honest with themselves, are not going to hit that distinguished mark in the first year of utilizing this rubric or in their first year of implementing a Kids Heart Challenge program. So, don't be upset with yourself if you look at that criteria and think, wow, that's going to be really challenging for me to accomplish this year. But I think by starting and reading that level first, it puts it into your mind that this is really the target we're shooting for. Then what you want to do is read down to level 3 and see where you are. If you're doing a really good job and you're proficient and you're able to execute the way that teachers should be able to execute in this program, this is the level where you're really going to fall. And then, briefly read through level 2 and level 1 ahead of time, but all of the criteria that you're trying to meet, that's going to be found within the level 3 and level 4 pieces of this rubric. Once you have completed the program and you're getting ready to give yourself a score, go back and read through all of these levels. So first read through level 3 and level 4 at the beginning before you execute the program, and then when you're all done with the program and you're ready to rate yourself, go ahead and read through all of the different levels so you have a better understanding of really where you fall. And again, being honest is the most important. It would be better to indicate that you're at level 2, that you're at a basic execution, and then be able to reflect on what you need to do to get from basic to proficient. How are you going to take that leap from level 2 to level 3? That's really what administrators want to see. They want to see how you're planning for and how you're setting goals towards your professional growth. So keep that in mind as you utilize all of the different levels of this particular rubric. All right, Paisley, take us to page 3, and this is where we'll begin taking a look at the teacher evaluation and self-reflection guides. So there are 4 guides that you'll utilize, again, after you've executed the program. Each guide is based on one of the 4 domains of the Danielson framework. So the first domain is all about planning and preparation. And what we've done is we've gone through and we've broken out from the components of this domain, what are the things that are specific to the Kids Heart Challenge or the American Heart Challenge that you really need to follow along with. So for example, at the Kids Heart Challenge level, have you gathered all of the content and organized it? Do you understand the basic competencies for the jump rope program, the basketball program, or the Ninja Warrior program that you have decided that you want to execute? And the Kids Heart Challenge team and the American Heart Challenge teams have done a great job of providing some basic content for you to execute. So if you utilize the resources that they give, you're going to have a fantastic program. If you want to go above and beyond and you're looking for other ideas, there are links and resources that we've helped develop with the open contributors that are specific to Kids Heart Challenge so that you can go in and you can take those programs to the next level. So you'll notice if you look through the Danielson framework, you'll notice that all of these different components match up with all of the components of that framework. And again, if you don't use Danielson, I'm almost certain that whatever rubric your district uses for professional growth will align in a very meaningful way to each one of these components. So as you go through, you'll just give yourself a check in each of the columns for the components that there are. So knowledge of content and pedagogy, you would go ahead and you would check mark where you are, level 1, level 2, level 3, or level 4. Once you've done that, you will add up all of the different scores that you provided, and you will come up with a total domain score. Once you do that, it's important to note that that total domain score is really for you to use in the following year so that you can see that you've improved your domain score over time. If you have given yourself a perfect score and you've scored a 4 on each one of these components, either you're a veteran teacher with a lot of experience under your belt and you just totally rocked it, or maybe you're not being completely honest with the performance. So very rarely would anyone have a perfect score in each one of these domains. So again, make sure you're really reflecting. Now on the bottom, this part is going to be critical. This is where you're going to write in your reflections on where you are in each of these. And what I would focus on primarily is one of the components that you scored really strongly on. Why did you score so strongly? And then pick another component that maybe you didn't score so strongly on and focus there on how you're going to work actively and improve that score for the next year. That's the information that you're going to put on the teacher reflection for domain 1, domain 2, domain 3, domain 4. And the idea is that you're giving the information not only to your administrator so that they can see what your roadmap is for growth, but you're also notating it for yourself. So next year, when you're going to run your Kids Heart Challenge program, you're going to pull these documents out, you're going to read through, and it's going to give you some guidance. Oh yeah, that's right. You know, when I'm designing my instructional environment, I really wanted to go through and find some materials that did a better job of supporting higher level thinking. And that reflection was right there. And now you've got a week or two or maybe 3 to go in and do some research either on the openphysed.org website or whatever the other resources that you might tap into for this, and really boost your program and make sure that you're scoring at a higher level. So that's how you would use actually all of these domain charts. So Paisley, if you could scroll down to the next one, you'll see that the classroom environment is domain 2, and there are 5 different components within that that you're going to look, and you're going to make sure that it's an inviting environment, that you're managing student behavior in an effective way that promotes a positive learning environment, and that the space that you're working in is safe and accessible for all students. And each one of those bullets is something that all teachers know that they're working towards, and based on your experience level and the growth that you've experienced already in your career, you're going to find yourself at a different place along the continuum here, and that's okay. But you're going to utilize this chart in the exact same way that I just explained. You would utilize the chart for domain 1, and then the next page, Paisley, is domain 3. And as you can see, we've really, again, pulled out what we feel is going to be really important for Kids Heart Challenge and American Heart Challenge programming. And then the next page is domain 4, and it's the same layout. Now, once you get into the next page, it will give you information on how do we actually go in and manage our professional development hours within each one of these domains and each week. So if you look at your Kids Heart Challenge and American Heart Challenge execution guides, you'll notice that it's broken up really into a 4-week process. And that 4-week process, in terms of your professional development, really extends itself, because the execution guide gives you, okay, this is where our starting point is in week 1 with our kickoff, and it takes you through, and even in the execution guides, they say, week 4 and beyond, because there's going to be things that you need to do to wrap up the program. And as you're working towards your professional growth, there's certainly things that you're going to do in order to reflect and make sure that that you're doing everything that you can to get better each and every year. So what we've done is we've created a focus domain for each of the weeks. So in week 1, for example, it makes complete sense that you're going to focus on domain 1, which is planning and preparation in the Danielson framework, because that's exactly what you're doing. You're planning and preparing for the Kids Heart Challenge event. And then we've pulled out a couple of bullets that we felt were really good guides on a focal point for you as you do your planning and preparation. Now, does that mean that you may want to focus on another area of the Danielson rubric? You can absolutely do this. We put those bullets in there as a starting point for you, as a suggestion on getting you started. So we've done a little bit of research with folks who have worked on projects like Kids Heart Challenge, and those folks who've done Kids Heart Challenge early for the American Heart Association this year. And we broke out what we believe is approximately 2 professional development hours for each week that you're participating in the Kids Heart Challenge programs or the American Heart Challenge programs. So at the very end, as you go through all 5 weeks, plus the planning event, it's a maximum of 12 PD hours that you can submit for. Now, this is a guide that we believe is universal. However, again, it's going to be important for you to talk to your professional development administrators to find out if this qualifies for that maximum 12 PD hours. And in some cases, it may qualify for an additional set of credit hours that you can negotiate with your district. For example, there have been many teachers that have participated in an open professional development this year that was sponsored by the American Heart Association. And in many of those professional development events, we can use those hours towards above and beyond the 12 credit hours that are listed on this sheet. So again, it's going to be really important that you work with your district and follow the guidelines and maximize what you can in terms of your professional development hours that you'll get credit for. But this document is very self-explanatory. Really, you're just totaling through and adding up the hours so that whoever is in charge of documenting this for you has a record of it and is ready to go. And once again, that email address is listed at the very bottom of this page. So you'll save all of the documents, scan the documents that you've written on, and send that scanned document over to the Kids Heart Challenge team, and they will get back to you with a certificate that you can then staple to everything and turn in. And there's a lot to professional growth. There's really a lot to think about as you try to maximize your career as an educator. But in terms of these tools, that's it. There's not a lot of complicated paperwork to be done. It's all about self-reflection and really honestly taking a look at where you want to go with the Kids Heart Challenge experience. So Paisley, I'm going to pause there for just a second, and I don't know if there's anything that you'd like to add so the folks kind of understand how to reach out to your team, or if there's any questions that came up along the way.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for this great overview. Many of you might be thinking right now, how do I get this document? You have received it through an autoresponder when you submitted your order for Kids Heart Challenge or the American Heart Challenge. However, if you do not have that email, we do have it available in the Teacher Resource Center of all of your headquarters. And if you are unable to find it there or still don't have it, feel free to reach out to the email provided at kidsheartchallenge@heart.org or your local staff person. They'll be able to provide this for you as well. Aaron, you did a great job of letting the volunteers know exactly what to do. We will ask that all the documentation be attached. We will quickly review those documents and we will return a certification certificate back to you that you can use at your local district level or state level as you see fit. Aaron, I think you did another great job of explaining each state has different requirements, and so we have done our very best to create a universal tool. But if you run into any problems or issues, please reach out to the Kids Heart Challenge at heart.org box and or your local staff person, and we'll work with you and your district to provide additional resources if we are able to. But last but not least, we would just like to thank you all for everything that you have done this year for the American Heart Association by incorporating our open programs, by incorporating the program in your school service learning, and the depth and knowledge that the children have received this year. It's so empowering when you are in schools and you are hearing kids talk about our characters and talking about the mission that they're learning and those lifelong lessons that they'll take with them forever. And so thank you for everything that you do. And if you have any additional questions, please reach out to the team at Kids Heart Challenge at heart.org and we'll answer all those questions. And Aaron, thank you so much for going over this document. Great job as usual, and look forward to talking to all of you soon with some more updates over the summer about the great new changes and updates and exciting new things happening in addition to everything that happened this year with our Kids Heart Challenge and American Heart Challenge. Thank you, everybody.